Welcome back, Wolfpack. Verlisify, and this is how to use Gumshoos, confirmed by Junichi Masuda to not be based off of Donald Trump. And this is going to be your standard normal type Pokemon that you counter on early in your adventure. So what does that mean? It means we're weak to fighting, we're immune to ghost, and that's pretty much it. Everything else is going to be neutral damage, but we do not resist anything, and it's pretty much just as mundane offensively that we hit nothing super effective. We are resisted by rock and steel, and we are immune by ghost, so we don't have a lot of pressure offensively unless we're just going for like straight high damage normal type moves. Looking at Gumshoos stats, this is what I'm talking about. Early on in the game, you're not going to encounter crazy base power Pokemon, and unfortunately that means it is going to make Gumshoos pretty challenging to use. 45 on the base speed. When people were waiting for Gumshoos stats, we were hoping for some kind of competitive speed tier, but 45 is absolutely unsavable, that you can't scarf it and hope for the best, so you can't really get much out of that 45 speed. Trick Room maybe, but other than that, the 110 attack is respectable. So pretty much this Pokemon is going to be a brawler, but it will take a lot of damage while being pretty slow. However, the abilities of Gumshoos are absolutely amazing. We have Stakeout, Strong Jaw, and Adaptability. So pretty much no matter how you look at it, you are getting some kind of good damage boost. Stakeout is going to make it to where a Pokemon freshly coming in is going to be taking double damage. So if you're always KOing something, you're always doing double the damage. I really like the abilities because it kind of has different risk rewards and also different damage amounts. So with Stakeout, you're doing double damage. With Strong Jaw, you're doing 50% more damage with bite moves. So those bite moves are going to be getting an effective stab. And then Adaptability doubles the effectiveness of our stabs on normal type moves to 200% boost. Therefore, everything is like a non-stab super effective hit with that Adaptability. So less damage than Stakeout, but it will always be in effect for those normal type moves. So when we look at a move list for Gumshoos, it's honestly pretty sad that we don't see any elemental coverage. That when you see a Pokemon like Yungoos, you see a Strong Jaw Pokemon, you're thinking, oh, it's going to get some kind of bite move. It's going to get a Fang move, Poison Fang, Fire Fang, Ice Fang, Thunder Fang, something like that through egg moves, through level 0, but we get none of that on the Gumshoos, so pretty much it's going to be Crunch and Hyper Fang. Gumshoos is the first Pokemon with Strong Jaw that gets Stab or even Hyper Fang boosting right there, so we actually get into a lot of potential damage on the Gumshoos off of that Hyper Fang right there. Remember, it is in place of our abilities, so Adaptability versus Strong Jaw on the Hyper Fang is going to be the same, which means Adaptability return is just going to be more damage, and then the Crunch, it's Crunch, so we don't really add anything, which means Strong Jaw is pretty much off the table, but we see the Last Resort. Now, fans and longtime viewers of my channel will know that Last Resort is the hype. You can combo this move with so much that let's go and look at Yungoos' moveset. So pretty much, I'm just thinking Last Resort, that you pretty much only go Last Resort. The return is going to be your reliable damage on top of it. And that's kind of all I've got. GG right there. So we will need a Baton Pass. So I'm looking Adamant Nature, getting the most damage possible into this Gumshoos, and then just max out attack speed and try to get +2. That +1 speed is not going to be enough on this Pokemon. You will need a +2 on a speed boost, an agility Baton Passer, something like that, and that's why we have the Focus Sash. Because if you're going to be Baton Passing those stats, and Gumshoos is a frail little Pokemon without any of those hit points or defensive investments, it's going to be coming into a potentially massive hit. It survives on the Focus Sash, and then you just kind of win. Because we have Adaptability or Stakeout. You get to choose the move that you feel most comfortable with, and as long as your opponent does not have any ghost type Pokemon or like the most beefy rock and steel tanks, you're just going to be able to slaughter everything. Last Resort is an incredibly high base power move, and it's going to be potentially doubled off of your Stakeout ability while gaining Stab, while having good attack, and if you even Baton Pass Swords Dance, like Swords Dance speed boost into Gumshoos, you win. So Last Resort makes it to where if you have used all other moves, that you get to use Last Resort. And you can even make it to where one other move can combo into Last Resort. So you come in and use Return. Return is already high base power. This is where the Adaptability could come into play. Use the Adaptability Return, you pretty much guarantee a KO on a weakened foe that you do need to play a little strategically. Then you use Last Resort, and then everything dies. So other things, like I said, the Hyper Fang, if you wanted to do a standard attacking set, maybe Trick Room Life Orb to where you're not just stuck into Last Resort, Hyper Fang and Crunch with a Strong Jaw is pretty solid because you're getting that super effective hit against Ghost type Pokemon yeah, that's kind of it. Like, you're getting the super effective hit against ghost-type Pokemon. Your Hyper Fang makes up for it, and it is 90% accuracy, but it does get a lot of boosting, and if you're Life Orb and you're playing under, or you also get the speed boost and something, like, you can still run Baton Pass with the non-gimmick Gumshoos if you want that crunch reliability, and that's going to be pretty nice. You can stake out that as well. So, just looking at the other options for the Gumshoos, and pretty much all the damage calculations are going to be based off of what we're expecting out of Last Resort. So Last Resort has 130 base power. So that's nuts right there, and it's going to be this top return right here because there isn't an entry for Last Resort. So effectively just turning the return into a Last Resort. But shows we get good damage. Like, this is unboosted. If we had one Swords Dance, even more, that's crazy. If we had a reliable substitute, like you could substitute then use Life Orb for even more damage. I personally just use Focus Sash, but you can kind of substitute any kind of different item that you think would work in this situation. And yeah, Adamant Nature, this is going to give us outspeeds, and I specifically brought up Noivern because the Adamant Nature at +2 will let you outspeed 123 base speed Pokemon. So you come in on Noivern, and this is why the Focus Sash works. Say Noivern throws out a Hurricane as your Baton Pass again, Focus Sash keeps you alive, and then you go and steamroll the Noivern, because look at this, we have no ability right here. So this is kind of simulating if we were going into the Stakeout, because Stakeout doesn't really do anything when you first come in, but if we had adaptability, well, Return is almost enough to KO. So if you have Stealth Rocks or even a slightly weakened Noivern, and even if Noivern has attacked, like Noivern attacks you, it loses on the Life Orb if it is a Life Orb set, so there goes 10% of its health right there, and now you have a very high chance of KOing on the raw Return. And now the just shenanigans that you pull off of the Last Resort is going to be massive right there, and then the damage is going to continue to snowball just like that. So looking at the options right there, now if we ran Jolly Nature, it gets a bit more risky. Still do find KOs on the Last Resort, but the return is going to be a little less. However, this will kick up our speed quite a bit, and then we'll be able to outspeed up to 140 base speed Pokemon, because 106 doubled. That is going to be enough right there to do a lot of crazy stuff. So you outspeed like a lot of Mega Pokemon with this, but you will give up some damage, unless you're going for Swords Dance, unless you're running Life Orb, then pretty much everything changes and you don't have to worry. Looking at some other just kind of breakdowns and whatnot, remember, we are outspeeding crazy speed Pokemon with this Jolly Nature right here, and it's kind of showing that even with Jolly, we can neutrally one-shot the adaptability Mewtwo. Yeah, boys, that's damage with the Life Orb. So just 110 attack, getting boosted, all kinds of craziness. So yeah, that's just a lot of boosting right there. And then I also do want to go and pull up something else. So again, let's get rid of adaptability. Let's get rid of the Life Orb. Now let's say it's Stakeout. You know, you bring it in on a low weakened foe. That means when this number is greater than 50%, remember, Stakeout is doubling on a freshly ended Pokemon, which means we are going to find KOs on something like the Mewtwo, and Mewtwo still has 100 on the hit points and 100 on defense. That's pretty crazy. That means, can we go up to 100, 100? Yes, we can. Can we go 110? 110? Yeah, boys. 110 hit points, 110 defense, uninvested, will still be enough to be KO'd by the Stakeout Gumshoos once you get that snowball going. So the return is going to be a lot weaker. As you can see right here, no Life Orb, going to sacrifice some damage right there, which means it will have to be a low Pokemon. But that's kind of the play around Gumshoos, that if you bring it in on the right thing and you get that first Stakeout to work, or if they switch, if you bring in Gumshoos and that forces a switch, you still have some opportunity right there to do a lot of damage to it. And yeah, then you can find the right outspeeds. Remember, this is Jolly Nature, so Jolly Nature up into that 140 with the Adamant Nature. It's going to give us even more damage on top of more damage on top of more damage. And let's go and try to find a tanky-ish kind of Pokemon. I think like the Abomasnow. That's just one that it starts out with by default. 90 base hit points, fully EV invested. Still going to be more than enough. So, I mean, what about, okay, 90, 70, 252, 252, still surviving. So even full defensive tanks are going to have a hard time. But once we get into some other stuff, let's look at Hippowdon. Hippowdon, it's going to be like the most massive defensive tank ever. Max out hit points, max out defenses. That's what we expect from the Hippowdon. Still, remember, we are doubling this. On the turn it comes in, we're going to be able to do 65% of its health. Next turn, we do lose that Stakeout, but this is still two-shotting a Hippowdon, which is about as defensively tanky as it can get. Because, yeah, we still snowball damage, and then we keep hitting Last Resorts, and that's a pretty much GG from there. So there are a couple of ways to play, you know, like I said, if you bring in the Stealth Rocks, you can weaken down your opponent quite a bit right there. Force some switches, bring in Gumshoos for like this late game transition, that can be pretty successful, but remember, it lives and dies on that speed boost. That if you cannot successfully +2 into the Gumshoos, bad things will happen. But can you Tailwind it in doubles? Potentially. Remember, you still have that weakened first turn on the return, but you can still make it work, you know. First turn, Tailwind, and then you sit on that Focus Sash with the Gumshoos. Use Return, then after that, it's going to be Last Resort damage. Then as Pokemon keep switching in, you can do a lot of damage. Make sure your Tailwind Pokemon is also a beast. I recommend Toucannon. Toucannon uses Tailwind, Gumshoos goes for that Return, and then you have Focus Sash on the Gumshoos, and then you have a lot of Pokemon just backing up, and then you just Tailwind damage and try to destroy everything. I think that's going to find some kind of success on the Toucannon. I was also looking at some of the Pokemon that we get. With just the Alola Dex, we do not have access to the Scolipede. As we can see, these are just the 5th gen Pokemon right here. I was thinking like maybe boosting defenses, you know, if you go Iron Defense Speed Boost, that could be pretty solid. Just trying to get a little bit of extra survivability into the Scolipede. Then as we can see right here, even with Generation 3, we don't have Speed Boost Baton Pass with something like the Ninjask. So for Alola Dex, this is also going to be kind of a restricted strategy. But again, any Pokemon with agility that can Baton Pass reasonably is going to be something you want to use. Getting the stats in the Yungoos will pay off pretty well, but again, you have to remove Ghost-type Pokemon, you have to remove certain specific tanks, you know, Ferrothorn comes in, Steel-type, Iron Barbs, Rocky Helmet, it's just going to slaughter you, because Gyro Ball, after eating an Iron Barbs, and then your Gumshoos is pretty much gone. Other than that, like, unfortunately, Gumshoos is pretty much just going to be gimmick, so I have the move set up here, we can kind of scroll through it. Earthquake, I mean, if you're running the Hyper Fang set, you can run the Earthquake, because that's actually going to be pretty solid. That you hit those Steel and Rock-type Pokemon that resist your primary stab. The Crunch is pretty much only for Ghost-type Pokemon. So the Earthquake adds on to that, gives you a little bit extra, but again, that's if you're running Baton Pass. Like, that's kind of all I see. There's unfortunately, like, if you got Agility. Got agility, maybe we can turn that into something kind of like how we could do that for the Diggersby. It's like, all right, Diggersby can boost its own speed and then be a realistic threat with that huge power, but we don't get that on the Gumshoos, and this is kind of what you expect. As I said earlier, it's an early Pokemon. It can't be too broken, and it's probably not going to get a lot of uses when it comes to competitive Pokemon, but even then, we could still kind of look it around. Super Fang, slight utility, probably not going to work too well in doubles. Yawn can put a Pokemon to sleep, but other than that, we are pretty much GG on anything else we can get out of the Gumshoos. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.